Monica, why do many students say they don't use AI when it's very obvious that they do?
I think there are a few overlapping reasons behind this behavior, and they can be both psychological and institutional, we can call it that way. So I think there is this strong fear of being accused of academic misconduct because many students perceive generative AI as something that sits very close to plagiarism or cheating. So even if they only using AI for relatively minor tasks like brainstorming or checking the language of a text, I think they worry that admitting it might lead teacher and instructors to question the originality of their work because of this perceived risk. Then some students prefer not to openly acknowledge that they use AI. And also, I was reading some studies about this. They were describing this phenomenon that it's called AI guilt. So it refers to the feeling that using AI somehow makes your work less authentic or even less intellectually honest. Students may feel that they should be producing everything independently and that relying too much on AI might be seen as laziness, for example, or shortcut. So even if AI is used only as a support, students can still feel uncomfortable admitting it. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like cheating when using AI?
Myself?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. I sometimes use AI to, for example, write YouTube descriptions or something like that for videos that I upload. And I'm like, yeah, I'm too lazy. Like, I don't feel good with myself, I must admit.
Yeah, like there is this feeling behind the use of these tools that you feel that you're cheating, right? Also, I think there is the reason also is because we have these unclear rules, right? So, like many universities, many schools and teachers are still in the process of defining what is acceptable. And there is this lack of boundaries. And so, consequently, students tend to be and stay and work in this gray zone. And so when people operate in this gray zone, they tend to stay silent rather than saying openly that they are actually using these tools. And then one last thing that comes to my mind is that it's almost that the older you get and more experienced you get, the more you have the right and also the responsibility to say openly that generative AI gets things wrong. But young people, in contrast, often feel less able to do this without so many years of work experience. They don't always feel qualified to judge an LM's output.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Monica. And you said before that some students see AI as cheating, so that's why they might not say that they are using it. But do you think that all students see it as cheating, or maybe some see it as part of the process? What's your experience?
So, well, coming from this personal experience, I would like to say not necessarily. I believe that students often have a much more nuanced view of AI use than what we might expect. So I think many students are already able to differentiate between the different levels of involvement in the use of AI and the work. So if it's just for brainstorming or checking the language or summarize some parts. But it's also true that there might be cases where a student is not able to do so because he or she doesn't have the correct instrument. So obviously there are always these two different parts, but I think the difficulty arises because students and teachers may not share the same assumptions about where the boundary lies. So teachers may interpret certain uses as inappropriate, while students may see them as a normal productivity tools. And when these expectations are not aligned, it creates uncertainty and sometimes mistrust as well.
That's very interesting. Yeah, how also like some sort of generational gap, the ones that are raised with these technologies at hand and the ones who grew up with different technology available, and how therefore our conception of how to use these tools is different. So that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And the last question, with all that we have discussed, what does this actually tell us about the future of education?
I think it tells us that the real challenge here is not simply the presence of AI, is not this anymore in the educational field, but rather how institutions, schools, and universities adapt to this. Because obviously, we all know that students are already integrating these tools into their everyday learning processes. It's obvious that AI is already there. The problem is in the fact that these tools remain invisible or very often also unspoken. So if students feel that they cannot openly discuss with the teachers how they use AI, then obviously teachers lose a very important opportunity to guide the students to use it in a productive and in a also ethical way, I would say. So this comes to the point of the AI literacy, what we call AI literacy. That's where it becomes really crucial, because if a person, a teacher that must guide the students and teach the students how to use this AI tool, avoid this kind of discussion, this kind of topic, then that's the point where we lose this possibility of AI literacy, because like understanding the limitation, now understanding the good use of these tools, verify, for example, the information. These are actually the really important and interesting points that teachers should focus on, and understanding the AI process, understanding where it's useful to use it. So I think really the AI literacy stays here at the crucial point of teacher must talk about it, because otherwise students, we've seen it, otherwise students just use it without feeling free to openly talk about it.
Yeah, it's almost like creating a safe space for this
Yeah.
constructive conversation between students and teachers. I think that's really interesting. And thank you so much for sharing, Monica. Your insights are really interesting for our audience. And I want to ask our audience, what do you think about this topic? What do you think is the future of education? We hope to read your comments in LinkedIn and in all the different platforms where we are available. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.